So we're going to resume the open session. We have several presentations for you this afternoon, and the first will be given by Susan Gregurick. And Eric, I think you're going to do her introductions.
Indeed, I am. It's a pleasure to do so. Welcome back, everybody. I happened to notice as I was doing director's report today, how many times I said something about the Office of Data Science Strategy, and how many times I said, this is being partially funded by or is being funded by Office of Data Science Strategy. That was not intentional. It just worked out. Maybe it's very emblematic of that office's interdigitation with a lot of NHGRI activities. And we just happen to have today as a guest, Susan Gregurick, who is the NIH Associate Director for Data Science and Director of the NIH Office of Data Science Strategy, often referred to as ODSS. Susan was instrumental in creating ODSS in 2018 and served as a senior advisor to the office until being named the director in September of 2019. Under her leadership, ODSS leads the implementation of the NIH Strategic Plan for Data Science through scientific, technical, and operational collaboration with all NIH institutes, centers, and offices. She received the 2020 Leadership in Biological Service Award from the Washington Academy of Sciences for her role, for her work in this role. Turns out Susan is no stranger to genomics. Prior to joining NIH in 2013, she was a program director in the Office of Biological and Environmental Research at the Department of Energy, where she developed the information and data sharing policy for the agency's genomics science program. Susan received her undergraduate degree in chemistry and mathematics from the University of Michigan, and then a PhD in physical chemistry from the University of Maryland. She completed a Lady Davis postdoctoral fellowship at Hebrew University in Israel and a Sloan postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Maryland's Center for Advanced Research in Biotechnology, now the Institute for Bioscience and Biotechnology Research. Members of this council specifically asked to hear from Susan at some point, and we finally got it to work out with her schedule and our schedule for council meetings. And so we're delighted to have Susan here to give us an update on the activities of the NIH Office of Data Science Strategy and other things going on in the data sphere at NIH. Susan.
Thank you so much, Eric. For my colleagues at NHGRI and for council, I'm actually super delighted to be here today. What a fun group. Oh my goodness. And you have cake. This is the first time.
Cake at every council meeting.
Do you really?
Yeah, tell all the other institutes that and see if they believe you.
I would come back for cake. This is awesome. Really, it's just delightful to be here to tell you how we're catalyzing data science through partnerships and collaborations across NIH and with the community. And while I'm going to highlight the work we're doing with NHGRI, I could tell very similar stories with many of our institutes, centers, and offices. And you're free to ask me any questions. And so with that, yes, it does work. I want to kick off by telling you about the future, and then I'm going to go back and tell you about all the great things that we've done. But first, I want you to hear what we're thinking about in the next 5 years. And I'd like to also invite you to watch the September 7th Council of Council meetings, which is linked, maybe not super visible, but linked at the bottom of the slide, and I hope that the slides are shared, where you'll see the full presentation of the Strategic Plan for Data Science for the next 5 years. And with that, what are we going to do? Well, we're building on the work that we've already done over these past 4 years that includes work across NIH, including sustaining our efforts in data sharing and data management, which I'm sure that you're very interested in, and supporting our data resources. We're also going to enhance our efforts to support a federated biomedical data infrastructure and support training for a broader community that can participate in data science. There are new efforts, as data science is a fast evolving field, new efforts to enhance data derived in the course of care for research, and new efforts in artificial intelligence. And these are important elements for our future of data science. And just as an aside, I didn't have time to put it in the slides because it just came out on Friday evening, but there's a request for information, an RFI, on the use and opportunities of real-world data for biomedical research. It's not OD 23-180. I would really appreciate it if you could look at that, and if you could also let the community know about this. It'll be open until the middle of December. I think December 14th is when it closes. So with that, I thought that an agenda today, which might be of interest, is how we can create and share fair data in line with our data management sharing policy, how we can develop and sustain software, what the impact of the cloud has for research and where we're going and where we could go, talking about federated data platforms. This is really important because we partner with you on Anvil, and so I really want to tell you what we can do with Anvil. And then, of course, our opportunities in artificial intelligence, which will lead right well into the next presentation after mine. And as Eric said, I do lead the Office of Data Science Strategy. I'm also the Associate Director of Data Science. And our goals are to provide NIH-wide leadership and coordination and catalyzation across data sciences, both within NIH, partnering with other agencies, which I'll talk about very, very briefly, and with other international efforts. We hope to develop a vision that is a modernized and integrated biomedical data ecosystem. My goal, and I think our goal generally, is to enhance diverse and talented data science workforce and to build strategic partnerships both here at NIH and across our federal agencies. So this is, I think, a pretty impactful slide. It just tells you at a snapshot, an overview of the funding that we receive from Congress. We are a line item budget. Last year, which is the year that I've collected data for, we're still in the final throes of 2023, so I can't report on that until the dust settles. But in 2022, we received $70 million from Congress, of which $63 million was reinvested in NIH activities. So that is the main goal of our office, right, is to catalyze data science across NIH. And you'll see the proportion of funding received by each institute, center, and office, and NHGRI is in red. And I wanted to point out two elements which are quite large and why they're large and what we're doing in that respect. The first is CIT, our Center for Information Technology. One of the efforts that we've been working on since 2018 is STRIDES, and I'll talk about our partnership with our Google Cloud service providers, Google, AWS, and Microsoft Azure. Our office supports the infrastructure that is STRIDES, the staffing, the training, the professional services, all of the work that NIH does internally with STRIDES and externally with the community is supported through my office. We also support a lot of work in identity and access management, and you'll hear just briefly about that. But those two efforts are a very large chunk of funding that goes to CIT so that we can enable all of NIH to use cloud computing and to use services such as identity and access management. We also partner with the National Library of Medicine, and we are the supporters of SRA. So we support the cost of the cloud for SRA, as well as a lot of technology development on SRA, including petabyte search of sequences. This is a partnership with DOE that I'm super proud of. And we also support activities in dbGaP and modernizing dbGaP. And I won't have the opportunity to talk about that today, but I would love to come back and talk about it, as well as in enhancing and modernizing the Common Data Elements data repository and other partnerships that are similar to the other ICs in terms of supporting extramural programs. So this is sort of a general overview of what our office supports and writ large. It's artificial intelligence, enhancing our data infrastructures, supporting data sharing, developing tools and analytics, and training data science workforce. So with that, I'm going to turn it to the next slide. And I'm going to cough because I have seasonal allergies, and it's just really a problem today. So I do apologize ahead of time. So let me start at the beginning. And this is also the first goal of our strategic plan for data science, which is to support the creation and sharing of fair data. So let me talk about our data management sharing policy, which I'm 100% sure you know about, which is that all applicants for NIH federal funding who would like support for their research need to provide a plan on how their data will be managed and shared. And this is part of your application process, and I'm sure that you've heard about the review of these plans at NIH. This policy is also true for our NIH intramural research projects. So it is a fairly comprehensive plan. And my goal is to support the policy with different types of implementation and infrastructure. And I won't talk about everything. I did leave a slide at the back of the presentation that I won't cover, but it tells you a lot more about what we're doing to support this policy. But one of the things I did want to tell you about is how we're supporting researchers to enable them to create and share fair data. And I'm sure that you've seen and heard about fair data, making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, as well as to support repositories, our way that we can share and manage data to align with the OSTP characteristics of desired repositories, as well as to align with the trust principles. And trust is transparency about specific repository services and data holdings, responsibility to ensure that the data has authenticity and integrity, and that it will be preserved. User focus, that's so that we work with our targeted user communities to meet their needs, and thinking about sustainability to sustain services and preserve data holdings, and finally, ensuring that our technology capabilities are robust. So our goal is to support both generators of data and repository managers so that we can instantiate a very robust data management sharing plan policy implementation. Oh, thank you. My goodness, thank you so much. So one of the things that we've done for the past 3 years is to support the community to develop fair and fairer data. And I just want to highlight one of the applicants so that you can see some of the work that we're doing, which is Dr. Vacquez Guillemont, and she is an associate professor at Washington University in St. Louis. She's developing ways to enrich data elements and tools that will advance the use of electronic healthcare record data to help stratify septic patients who might be at risk for infections caused by multi-drug resistant microbes. And this is pretty much in line with where we see the research and use of electronic healthcare data going. Generally, folks who are supporting fair data and receiving funding through our office through this initiative are doing activities such as imputing missing data. This is a really big part of fair data, and a big part of AI is imputation services. They're looking at cleaning and data filtering. They're looking at data representations to improve computational efficiency. They're looking at data wrangling and cleaning. They're looking at adoption of ontologies and standards, another really important area. And when you see the strategic plan, you'll see a lot of effort in these standards, ontologies, common data elements, and data mapping techniques, as well as ways to look at identifying imbalances and biases in data. And particularly important is data labeling and metadata. So there's just a lot of work that we can do and we can continue to support. And you'll see some really exciting work on the use of AI and large language models and data curation. And I want to just call out, in case you haven't seen it, there's, I think it was also released on Friday, an ARPA-H funding announcement, which I can link to and provide you that resource to do and create the data fabric. One of the elements in there is the use of AI and large language models for data curation, and there's just a lot of really good work there. So, if you're interested in this effort, I do encourage you to also look at what ARPA-H is interested in. I think you'll find a lot of excitement there as well. So let me just take a moment to tell you how we're supporting our NIH data repositories. And over the past 3 years, we've supported 21 data repositories from 7 different institute centers and offices. And the program that we support really identifies data repositories and knowledge bases that fill scientific needs or gaps in the community. Here, our goal is to align data repositories with those OSTP and trust characteristics. We expect that the repositories will engage their research communities for data management and sharing needs, and that they will work with us on developing data governance structures and utilizing a data lifecycle approach for preservation. So this has been approximately $5.2 million invested in our 21 different data repositories. And just as an example, I just want to call out the excellent work of UniPro, and also I want to kind of forecast where this is going. So UniPro is, I'm sure you're very familiar with it. It's led by NIH, but it's partnered with a number of institutes, NIA, NIAID, Cancer, NIDDK, NEI, NIGMS, NHLBI, and my office. This is a NIH-wide program that supports data resources for data management, data sharing, both knowledge bases and data repositories. And it sort of points to how we're moving in the future. So now we have 2 new funding announcements that just came out not too long ago. One is to support early stage repositories. And these are repositories that are meant to invest in new community data sharing needs. So there might be data opportunities for which there is not a community data repository to meet those needs. So this is an opportunity to support those repositories. This is a small award, it's only 4 years, and it supports these repositories at about $350 in direct cost. It's important to realize that not every IC is signed on to this one. The second funding announcement, NOFO, is to support established repositories, and those are repositories that have a significant community behind them. They're providing sustained resources where the community, here the goal is to support the community to focus on those community needs, to support services and efficiencies, including innovations and services. Now, of course, the budget needs to reflect the repository, so there's no framework here. You need to support the repository and at the resource that the community needs, and these are 5 years. One thing to note that this is kind of a unique program. There's a team of NIH program staff that partner across the ICs, led by my office, to support this program. There are letters of intent that are strongly encouraged and a special emphasis panel with very particular review criteria for data resources. And I'm really looking forward that what we're developing here is a consortium of data resources and funders to bring together us and the awardees to develop common approaches in data management, metrics, and aligning to our ongoing national and international efforts. And I just want to call out, in particular, Ajay Pillai, who is leading this along with other colleagues. And, I really thank NHGRI for their contributions. And of course, my office will support this with co-funding for those resources like UniPro, which clearly transcend more than one IC's mission. So I do hope you'll get the word out about those funding announcements, and many, many ICs support the established resources as a way to support data repositories and knowledge bases apart from R01 grants, which in my opinion, and I think others, are misaligned with the need of supporting a resource. Where are we going in the next 5 years? What we will do is we will establish guidelines, processes, and data sharing tools and training to support our data management sharing policy. We will increase the community's development and use of community agreed upon standards and enhance our AI capabilities, particularly in data curation and harmonization, data mapping, data curation. These are all efforts that would really align well with large language models and foundational models. And our ultimate goal, or the end game, is to establish a long-term sustainability program for NIH-funded data assets. And so I really look forward to partnering with NHGRI and other ICs on this effort. Let me tell you a little bit about an important part of our data ecosystem, which is software. So over the last 4 years now, we have supported the community to enhance software that is funded through NIH. And you'll see that we have funded so far 126 NIH awards in partnership with 19 institute centers and offices to bring software engineering practices and personnel to enhance the support of our software. We funded new collaborations between biomedical and clinical researchers and software engineers. We have supported software development that will enhance software to take advantage of new computing paradigms such as the cloud or now hybrid computing. And we've encouraged software development for open science, including we have now on our website software best practices, which can be utilized. And I'm happy to say that this year we've also joined as a member RISA, and we are pleased to support the FAIR software principles. So let me give you a particular example on why this is important to me and maybe to you. I want to point out the work of Gabor Marth, who is funded by NHGRI, and he applied for and received a software supplement to enhance his Rufus software for open engineering and cloud tools. And so what he's doing is he's basically refactoring the code base to make it more portable to the cloud and to enhance its adoption and its distribution through distributed computing. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, and this is reflected in many of these awards, is that this is a particularly challenging example of people who develop software who have a hard time doing any types of sort of production level refactoring or enhancements on an R01 grant. It simply isn't a mechanism which is going to be easily adopted for that purposes. So this is the point of this program. It's really to, if you've ever heard Dan Katz talk, it's to bridge the gap of software development between academic software and software that large amounts of community can use or can reuse. And so I'm really, really pleased to tell you, and it's worth watching this, by the way, this presentation in January of 2023, so almost a year ago now, where we received council clearance for 2 new programs. And the first one is to support software engineers who are going to work in the biomedical or behavioral space. And they're going to be independent funded investigators who can collaborate as independent investigators with biomedical researchers and really work on software engineering practices and principles and foundations for software for biomedical purposes. And the second program is a software sustainability program. It's an RO3, and it's doing exactly what we did with supplements. It's fostering the software foundations to increase the robustness, the reproducibility, and the reusability of our NIH-supported software. And so these NOFOs should come out in 2020, in fiscal year 2024. They're being developed. And I just want to thank Heidi Sophia, who was an NHGRI colleague, now at NCBI, and she leads a team of a number of NIH staff who've been working on this program for years, and it's really making a big impact, and I'm super pleased to sponsor this program. Just an FYI, I'll quickly go over this. If you're interested in working with us in NSF, we have a program in Smart and Connected Health. It's innovations in computer science and information science and engineering that support transformative health and medicine. And there's a number of areas which we're funding in trustworthy and fair AI, in new analytics, in next generation multimodal and reconfigurable sensors, and robotics, and cyber physical systems, and biomedical imaging interpretation, and unpacking health disparities and health equity. So there's a webinar, there's a link at the bottom here on the 25th of September, and the full proposals are due on November 9th. Just to note, this is an NSF-led program, so the proposals go to NSF and are reviewed in NSF panels, and then we work with NSF to fund the applications that are of interest to NIH ICs, and there are 23 ICs participating. So just a quick note, if you're interested in this program. This is just one example of a partnership with agencies that my office runs. We run several others that I'm happy to talk about. So we have data, and we have software, and now let's see if we can bring it to the cloud. And this is one of my favorite quotes by David Glaser and Alexander Teddes, which is that, if you have the cloud, you don't necessarily need to do data science at a center, in your cluster. You can actually do it at a global scale. The clouds can be scaled up and down depending on your needs, and you can do an analysis of petabytes of biomedical data, as we are actually trying to do with SRA. So, this is quite an opportunity. And now I'd like to tell you where we are with this and where we can go, and see if David and Alexander were right about their prediction. You probably have heard of our STRIDES program. It's a partnership with Google, with AWS, and with Microsoft Azure. And what we bring and what they bring to us is discounts on cloud computing, so cloud storage and cloud computing. They provide professional services, which I'll talk briefly about. They provide new opportunities and training, and as well as reach through to specific and additional partners. And you can see some of the impact here on the right-hand side of the slide. We have over 248 petabytes of data on the cloud, and 1 petabyte is approximately 230,000 high-quality DVD movies, so it's just a lot of data, lots of compute hours and research programs, and people trained. And this is over the entire course of the STRIDES program since 2018. So in many ways, it's been impactful. But there are still opportunities to address new challenges, and one of them is encouraging researchers to just explore and test the cloud. And so we've done this through a variety of different mechanisms over the years. And actually it was just this year, we issued a supplement to existing NIH-funded investigators to explore the cloud. And so one of the things I want to show you is the folks who are working with us to explore the cloud and what they're doing. But I want to call your attention to a particular challenge that the intramural researchers have. And this is just true of any institute, is that it is often requires very special expertise to bring on an FTE in order to work in the cloud and sort of form that partnership. So one of the things we did is that we provided additional funding for our intramural investigators to actually bring on the staff needed in order to work with the codes and work with the data and port it to the cloud. And I'm super happy that we did. We listened to what our investigators were telling us, and we're very responsive. And I imagine that we're going to continue this program in 2024. And now I want to tell you a little bit about more that we can do. There's more than just funding, investigators to explore the cloud. There's actually building a sandbox or a cloud lab for investigators to try the cloud, to evaluate the utility and the cost of the cloud, to reduce that financial and labor and time commitments before they actually commit. Maybe they want to develop new tools and benchmark those on different architectures and infrastructures and hardware combinations in the cloud. Maybe they want to share ideas with their students or their collaborators, or simply just reskill or train new people. And so one of the things that we've done, and this has been about 2 years in the making, it was not easy, is to stand up a cloud lab, which was launched on June 23rd, which happened to be my birthday, for both the intramural staff, which you see as the light gray, and the NIH awardees. And this is just data as of August 2023, and you'll see our 3 cloud service providers who are participating in Cloud Lab. And one of the things I'm really happy about is that we're really able to work with investigators, and we partner with NIGMS to award grants to the Idea State to develop training modules for them and for their community. And now we're putting these out for the rest of the community to use. But this really, is a training and software and workflows that these Idea State researchers are most interested in. And so it's what we would call co-design and co-development with AWS and Google in particular. And so I'm super happy that we're able to have this opportunity to provide a resource for researchers to use. But it doesn't stop there. It's not just providing a cloud lab and credits so that you can use the cloud. It's also partnering with different institutes on their programs for data science education. And I'm super happy to participate with NHGRI and with all of us on the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, who are creating a genomics data science educational hub for early career researchers. This is super important to provide the foundation for students from diverse backgrounds to learn through hands-on workshops and training sessions about data science, to facilitate their educational research programs, and to just build a really strong foundation. And so I look forward to partnering with NHGRI and others in similar efforts. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about bringing together our data and our data platforms and our analysis. And as I've said, there's over 248 petabytes of data on the cloud. To give you a sense of the scale of the data, it's just about every type of data you can imagine across NIH. Bringing that data together in a coherent way that researchers can use is a grand challenge. Just finding that data and searching across 250 petabytes of data just on the cloud is in and of itself a grand challenge. Why is it important? As you may know, NIH supports a number of different data platforms. There's well over 300 data repositories, 80 of which are controlled access data, and many of those are moving or have moved to the cloud. Many of these data systems are very complex, and they have a large amount of data, different data types. Just for example, Anvil, which is supporting your institute, the Genomics Institute. However, there are other data systems like Cancer Research Data Commons and Biodata Catalyst that also have significant amounts of genomic and related data that investigators would be interested in. Researchers struggle to find and to access and to aggregate and analyze those data across our many different systems. And oftentimes what happens is it's repeated many different times in bespoke fashions, and it's just not the fun part of doing data science. It's really a labor of love. And so what can we do to just lower the barrier and make data much more available for researchers? This has been an effort that's been in pilot for about 2 years and now is a full-fledged effort, the NIH Cloud Platform Interoperability effort, which aims to establish and implement guidelines and technical standards and capabilities just to allow greater data sharing, greater data access, and ultimately end-user analytics across our participating platforms. And you'll see them in the cloud, Biodata Catalyst, Kids First, and NLM through SRA and dbGaP, the Cancer Research Data Commons, and Anvil. And I'm super pleased, and a quick shout out to Valentina DiFrancesco, who's actually leading this effort with our NIH colleagues and my office. And so again, very happy to be a part of this program. The goal and the platforms I've already told you about, but some of the things that are important in this program, of course, are to develop guiding principles to form trust so that the platforms that are working together have a basis for interoperability. There's a golden rule, if you share data and you use data, lower that barrier, make sure that you have the same level of security and compliance across systems, that you're actually communicating in transparency transparent about what the policies are for data access, and certainly share what the limitations of those data might be or those security requirements. Support the principle of least restrictive access. Make sure that if you have an API to access your data, you do have it very readily and openly available, and that you can certainly facilitate not only if possible, direct data sharing. If not, then data queries or analysis, sort of true federated data science. And then agree, of course, on standards and compete on the implementation. We can all agree on certain standards for APIs and technology. We can compete on the analytics and the visualization and the value added. And finally, and importantly for me, plan in the future to support a patient-partnered research endeavor as it becomes more and more the goal to have patients as part of our data research equation. And there's some technical examples of interoperability, including how we utilize identity and access management through researchers' auth services, how we utilize standards developed, for example, through GA4GH, our data repository service, DIRSC, which is an API that provides a generic interface for data consumers and workflows, Fast Healthcare Interoperable Resources, which is a technology transfer from ONC for data health IT, transferred to research for data mapping of clinical data. And finally, portable format bioinformatics, PFB, which is a way to have a carrier format for describing raw data and metadata and data models, which is highly structured and really makes that interoperability so much more easily attained. Just a really quick note, because I know we're going to be short on time, that there's a lot of different ways that we can think about interoperability projects, including large-scale search across our platforms, new tech IT standards to facilitate cross-platform analysis, and improving semantic and synaptic interoperability of specific or combined analysis. But what I want to show you, and I'm super pleased to tell you, that we have supported the Cloud Platform interoperability effort. It's a $16.8 million total over 2 years, and very grateful for NHGRI, who kicked in $500K to support this effort, and support an administrative coordinating center through Research Triangle Institute, partnering with Deloitte. And they have a number of very important activities, and the most important thing is to tell you how this is actually organized. So this is a great example of what one could call co-design. It's development of technology, but it's based on a scientific need. So researchers have to come together and say, I need data from these types of resources, and I need the technology to do this. So for example, in the case of understanding rare genetic variants, they need to aggregate and analyze data, not just from NHGRI and ANVIL, but from Cancer Research Data Commons and NHLBI, and potentially other resources, particularly if this is pediatric cancer, from Kids First. And only by working together on accessing and analyzing that data will we get to that research question answered, as well as new technology that we develop to make that happen. Same for sex-based chromosome association in very targeted diseases, as well as understanding colorectal cancer and health disparities in Hispanic populations. The one that is sort of a techie-only use case is the utilization of FHIR for data harmonization and for cohort discovery. Also, the Administrative Coordinating Center is looking at accessing multiple data sets across our systems. This is a hard activity to align both data access processes and security assurances, something that the Coordinating Center is working very hard on, as well as in the future to support new research, new training offerings, and outreach. And finally, this is a driver project of GA4GH. And so we will continue to work with GA4GH and other entities. Okay, there's maybe just a little bit of time to talk about AI, going very, very, very quickly. Okay, there's a lot of opportunities. I'm sure that you've seen the opportunities to integrate genomics data with phenotypic data, as well as electronic healthcare data, and just pointing out this really wonderful pipeline that did exactly that, to very rapidly sequence and then predict a potential phenotype for children of very rare diseases in less than 24 hours, noting that that pipeline is not transferable to other systems. But there are many challenges in AI. Notwithstanding, it is often the case that data proxies, in this case, using health cost and health visits as a proxy for wellness or risk, does result in racial bias. And there's some really wonderful opportunities in integrating social determinants of health with other data, such as electronic healthcare data. So I'm sure that you know quite a bit about the fact that AI has run afoul of a lot of issues, including unrepresented data, bias within data training, bad decisions, bad asking the wrong question, different ways that there's bias in algorithm, the lack of diversity in both the data sets and the researchers, as well as the lack of diversity in lived experiences. There are other things that you may or may not be familiar with, which is that Most of the work that we're doing is not static timestamp data, and people shift over time. So data shifting is a real issue that we have to deal with, particularly important when you're dealing with social determinants of health and integrating that into electronic or other data, as well as concept shift. And this is really important if you're using data from surveys, for example. Those concept shifts can be real and really do create bias. I can't show you everything that we've done in AI, but I will just point out that it's a substantial amount. NIH invests over $270 million last year in AI within the institutes and across the institutes for Bridge to AI, generating new flagship data sets, and aim ahead, which is enhancing the participation and representation of researchers and research communities who are underrepresented in the development of AI new technologies. We have supported for a number of years, and we will continue to do so, the collaborations to improve the AI capabilities of our data and our technologies. And I just want to point out that there's a number of really great work being done and supported by NIH GRI. For example, Alex is developing a computable knowledge framework for genomic medicine, and really this is pretty cool. It's developing computable concepts. What he's doing is he's designing schema for those concepts and a framework to support the tools that will build intuitive user applications. And this is sort of an integration of new concepts in knowledge, and I think it's something that you'll see in the future, as well as Alex, who is improving the protein sequence and function by embedding RIA, biochemical reactions and annotations into the protein metadata. And this is another really way of embedding data in data, which is going to facilitate large language models and protein clustering in this particular case. So there are new opportunities in AI, including developing new social and technical solutions for ethical AI, developing and creating validating approaches for synthetic data sets, particularly in the clinical space, leveraging new technologies and methods for foundational models. You know those as large language models. Those underlie things like ChatGPT. Developing new AI technologies to enhance the translation of data to knowledge. We partner with NSF on the Open Knowledge Network. I'm super pleased to be a funder of one of the Open Knowledge Network data fabric centers. Unfortunately, it has the same name as ARPA-H, but a completely different program. And then finally, enhancing the capabilities of AI through partnerships with other agencies like NSF and with communities. And with that, I think I might have run over just by 5 minutes. I want to thank all of my colleagues at NHGRI, and in particular, Heidi, Ajay, Valentina, Nicole, Ken, Sergio, who not only serves on the IMHAD committee, but also is a partner on the Data Educational Hub, and Christopher, who is here in the audience, as many others. And thank you, Eric, for the invitation. And I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, the floor is open for questions or comments. Nancy.
Thank you. That was a tour de force. It was really a lovely overview of what, we used to talk about postdoc years of work. This looks like 100,000 postdoc years of work that you just summarized. And of course, I want to pile some more onto you. So I'm a huge fan of data sharing, making it fair. I'm all about it. But I'm also, the bigger our data, the more results we have that should be shared. There is no provision in any of this for sharing all those results. And all of us who do data analysis hugely value these kinds of resources, but honestly, that's a very small proportion of the scientific community. Everybody values access to all the results of all these studies, but they're not here. Mm-hmm. They're not anywhere. They should be, they're not. And the cloud environment is actually not well set up for results databases. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're leaving the whole rest of the community behind in our effort to put data out there for all the people who love to analyze the raw data. 100,000 times more people access GTEx results than access GTEx data. And we can't afford to make results databases, as fancy as the GTEx results portal for all projects. But there are very inexpensive methods for results databases, grids, lookups. And I feel like, you know, I know all kinds of people in the Department of Medicine who now know how to use the GTEx portal to look up any SNP. Is it an EQTL? Is it and other things. Like, I just feel like we need to spend some time also making all of these expensive results available to the community. And I know I sound like a broken record because I've brought it up here before, but it's a very frustrating thing. We can't even put our public access results databases up on Anvil. It is not structured for those. We're working with some of the Anvil people to try to rebuild them in a way that they can be used in Anvil. Can we make this easier?
I think, yes, I think we can. And I think it's not going to be easy, but I think there's a path forward. And the reason I brought up the project with NSF is that's ultimately its real goal. It is a large graph-based application that is meant to actually do exactly what you're describing, which is to knit together all of the ways in which we can organize those snippets of data that might be found anywhere and make them readily searchable, findable, and hopefully accessible. It's not going to create a very large data repository. It probably won't even be on the cloud, although the network might be. But that's one of the goals, because you're absolutely right. We're organizing a lot of very well-curated data through UniPro, through Anvil, through Biodata Catalyst, through Cancer Research Data Commons. That's a small fraction of the ocean of data that you're describing, which we call it dark data, because it's very, very hard to find it. And so you'll probably see a lot more efforts in the coming next 5 years in search and discovery and organization, maybe not cataloging and indexing, because I think that's a problem that is not a good manual effort, but ways in which we can actually make that data accessible, especially with our data management sharing policy. Of course, we hope people will share their data in a way that is supported by their community, but you're right, it's just a drop in the bucket, and so that is one of the efforts. I hope that will help address your question, but I also think that this needs a lot more workshopping and planning, because it is no way near a solution phase yet. We are really struggling with this, and you bring up a very good point.
Second, Lisa. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you for a wonderful overview. I'd like to make a suggestion for all of us. You mentioned in your talk that there was a cost savings of 65 million for cloud, but actually that really depends on what you're comparing. And if you have a powerful on-premise cluster, it's much cheaper than using the cloud, but only if you actually have over a certain percentage of utilization. So it really depends, what the situation is. And, cloud doesn't come for free. It does make a lot of things a little bit more difficult for some kinds of computational analysis. So I'm just wondering if we could start to sort of be more precise about what we're comparing when we make statements like that, because I don't think cloud is a panacea for everything we want to do.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Coming from the HPC community, I do tend to agree that there are problems that are very well suited for high performance or cluster computing, and there are problems that are very well suited for cloud. Data science tends to be one of those more cloud readily problems. But you're absolutely right that the cost comparison is a little bit of a false dichotomy. That's the money that we save by providing those discounts. So what you really are looking at as a cost that you would have paid full price if you had moved to the cloud. It is absolutely not a comparison of what you would pay for on-prem or standing up a very large computing infrastructure. It is simply reflecting the discounts that we received. And that money is actually reinvested in NIH in different ways. So that is one of the benefits that we have.
Lisa.
I see, thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So thank you, and you indeed, it was a fire hose of wonderful opportunities that you were describing. Thank you for that. And Nancy picked up on some points for the aftermath, the afterwards. I want to go back to before all of these opportunities, just to signal that I think some of the problems that you listed there in relation to AI actually arise, of course, with regard to any use of a data set. The concerns about bias, the concerns about how you build the tool drives what uses you put to it, or from where you have a cost saving from a company or whatever, will drive what you then, how you decide to use the data set. The list you gave in the kind of half circle of all of the different omics, but maybe the ... but would be environmental factors, would be behavioral factors, would be distinguishing environmental, which are social environmental factors, from those behavioral, do I smoke, do I drink, do I exercise, that are individualized. So I'm signaling, or I hope sort of asking about whether there is, in all the education that you're doing, also some education with regard to these kind of, I'll call them LC questions or critical thinking questions about how the data being in existence drives the questions that we ask, and in fact may perpetuate some of the problems that you were astutely pointing to. I know you mentioned Hispanics, colorectal cancer. There was another place with bias, but not a whole lot of examples of things that might try to correct omissions in the data sets. So an LC program to accompany this?
Absolutely, and I think, and here it would be wonderful to partner with NHGRI, and I have talked a little bit with Sergey, and he is on one of our working groups, but that is absolutely the case. There's both LC issues with utilization of AI and the incompleteness of data, as well as ethical issues in constructing the algorithms. And so both of these need to be addressed. We're at the beginning of this for AI, but your point is well taken that this has always been a problem with data and data science. It's just that AI kind of brings it up in a very obvious way, because if you use ChatGPT, you've probably discovered that it's, more often not exactly correct than correct, but the answers are incredibly well formatted. So you have a confidence structure that maybe you should not have. And just understanding the trustworthiness and the accuracy of the data and of the results are equally important. So absolutely, we are just at the forefront. We are starting to plan a workshop in this space. And so I hope that when we do, you'll consider, and maybe others will consider, coming to this workshop and contributing thoughts in the ethical frameworks and the ethical development of data science. And in particular, we phrase it more as AI because it's such a critical need right now with the administration.
Iftikhar.
Thank you for that overview. What do you see as ODSS's role in the use of large language models for biomedical applications?
So for us, and what our role is to catalyze new opportunities in that space. So what we would see happening is that we would be partnering with institutes who are interested in developing funding opportunities and new applications of artificial intelligence, developing large language or foundational models. All of the grants are held and managed by NIH. So we're the catalytic factor and we're the co-funder. But the ICs actually, they come with the science and the science drivers. They come with the mission statements and where those types of artificial intelligence and foundational models can make a big difference. You might see some opportunities in strides in large language models, in particular because we can set up secure cloud environments. And so there is a concern. You might have seen the notice by OER in using large language models for the review of grant applications. I just want to point that out as a concern. But we can also set up environments where you can utilize trustworthy AI in those environments.
Referring to the large compute needed for if you have a very large corpus, for example, medical literature or health records, would ODSS perhaps contribute towards that?
Oh, absolutely. And I forgot to mention, now I will, there is an interagency effort called the National AI Research Resource, the NARE. We are one of the main participants of NARE. It's led by NSF and DOE. NSF and DOE both bringing large compute. We're bringing cloud infrastructure, and a lot of data. And so this will be kicked off from OSTP in, I hope, October. So you'll see a lot of opportunities there through the NARE, and which will provide resources, compute infrastructure, and data to researchers who are interested in doing AI at that type of scale for large language models. So there's another good opportunity.
Judy.
Yeah, thank you. This is really incredibly exciting, and it's early days. So a comment and a question. So my comment is that there's a natural focus on data and data sharing, and obviously that's essential, but equally important is kind of the referencing, the standards, and the protocols. That's just my general comment. My question is about journals. So obviously NIH can kind of mandate data sharing, but another kind of key pinch point is journals. So have you started thinking about kind of with major papers, how integration might occur?
With our data management sharing policy, we have been thinking about it, mostly with working with OSP and OER. Absolutely. We've also been working, I didn't talk about this at all, but we have an initiative called the GRAY Initiative, which is a partnership across all 7 journals repositories to work together in a cooperation type of format where they work on developing shared metadata, shared metrics. They also have reach into the journals so that we can facilitate the linking of metadata and funding with journal articles and really make that data much more discoverable. And we have a consortium membership with DataCite so that our repositories under NIH umbrella can now hopefully more easily mint DOI so that at least the data is more findable and citable. But I think there's still much more work to be done with journals, and that might be a good opportunity for our new NLM director to work with me on because, for many reasons, I'm going to miss Patty, but she is retiring at the end of September.
I'm one of those horrible people that have comments instead of questions, so please apologize me for that. A little closer to your mic. A little closer to your mic, we'll hear you better. So I really love your analogy of data as a resource, and if I'm not mistaken, the picture was of an oil
Yes.
thing, and that is actually a very good analogy because creating all the data is expensive, like with oil going and find where it is and all the infrastructure. But one of the things that also happens with oil is that actually to make it useful, we have all this other infrastructure, right? We have pipelines, we have refineries, we have distribution for where you can go and refill your tank and stuff like that. And I would say that for the case of oil, probably the infrastructure is at least as expensive as the part to take the oil out of the ground. And this is, I think, a very useful analogy because we think a lot about we want to generate data as a resource, so we are going to put money into generating new data. But without all the other infrastructure to distribute it and make it useful, it's not very useful. And so there comes the question, how much are we spending, we meaning you, on taking it out of the ground versus making it available for you to fill your car, right? How much are we spending, meaning you, on that infrastructure side? Because I think my concern is always that we probably are not spending nearly as enough for doing it, and that creates all the difficulties about why aren't we able to use all these amazing data in the way that we should. So I think that's second analogy may be useful to get into people's minds.
I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. It's hard to quantify the amount that NIH writ large is spending on not just creating the data, but actually making it reusable. It's probably much more than my $70 million a year is going towards providing all the different infrastructures that we are providing and opportunities for new research. And it's a very good point that I might actually borrow from you.
Please do.
Because I think
don't think many people realize that part of the infrastructure.
That's right.
And it becomes a problem because you are depending on and asking people to do things for which they don't have the ability.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Other questions? If not, Susan, thank you very much.
Thank
Wonderful
you. Really
presentation.
appreciate the time and opportunity.